The morning had started with sunlight filtering gently through the windows of Kang Seo-jun's small flower shop in the quiet streets of Bukchon Hanok village. The scent of freshly trimmed peonies filled the room as he moved between shelves, carefully arranging a bouquet with hands that had memorized the language of flowers. Each bloom held a message, and today they spoke only one name in his mind: Yoon Ga. Seo-jun had been in love with Ga for years. She was everything he was not: bold, full of dreams, always moving with a sense of purpose. As an architect, her days were filled with sketches, site visits, and deadlines. But when she smiled, the world slowed down. And somehow, in the quiet corners of each other's lives, they found a rhythm that worked. They were opposites in every way, and yet perfect. Tonight was their 3rd anniversary. Ga had promised to meet him at the flower shop at 8 p.m. sharp. They were supposed to pick up the keys to their new apartment afterward, a place they had chosen together after months of searching. Seo-jun had spent the entire afternoon preparing the shop. A table was set with candles, a small cake, and a bouquet of her favorite flowers, white ranunculus, delicate and pure. But 8 p.m. came and went, then 8:30, then 9. His phone buzzed. A number he didn't recognize lit up the screen. "Mr. Kang Seo-jun," a woman's voice said, her tone tight with urgency. "This is the emergency department at Haeundae Medical Center. Ms. Yoon Ga was in a car accident. She's stable, but you should come." The world dimmed, the flowers blurred. His heart clenched with a fear that gripped him to the core. Hours later, Seo-jun sat on a cold hospital bench outside the ICU. Ga's parents arrived shortly after. Her mother wept silently, while her father paced, face pale. They were surprised to see Seo-jun there, but in the chaos of the moment said nothing. The doctors told them Ga had suffered a concussion and trauma to the brain. The prognosis was hopeful. Physically, she'd recover. But there was something else. "She has retrograde amnesia," the neurologist explained gently. "She may have difficulty remembering events from the past few years." "How many years?" her father asked. "It's hard to say. It could be temporary. But right now, she doesn't remember the last 5 years of her life." Seo-jun visited again 2 days later. Her parents had taken her home, away from the media and noise of the city. When she stepped into the living room to see him, she paused, her eyes polite but confused. "Hello," she said with a small, hesitant smile. "Do I know you?" He tried not to let the crack in his chest show. "I'm Seo-jun, a friend. I brought you these." He handed her a small bouquet of ranunculus. "They're beautiful," she said softly, taking them. "Thank you." Her parents watched from a distance, unaware of the years they had shared, of the nights they fell asleep on the couch watching movies, the dreams they whispered under the stars, or the apartment lease signed just last week. To Ga, Seo-jun was now a stranger. And to protect her fragile recovery, her family asked him to keep it that way. For now. So Seo-jun did what only someone who truly loved her would do. He stayed close, but not too close. He visited every few days, bringing her flowers, sometimes a book or a piece of her old artwork she'd forgotten she'd drawn. He'd sit with her, ask how she was feeling, and pretend that he wasn't heartbroken every time she tilted her head and asked, "Did we meet before this?" In quiet moments, he would catch glimpses of the Ga he knew. The way she furrowed her brow when she focused, the way she sipped her tea, holding the mug with both hands. But her laughter no longer reached her eyes. Not yet. At night, Seo-jun would return to the flower shop, still set for the anniversary dinner that never happened. He couldn't bring himself to clean it up. Not yet. Then came the dream. Ga woke up one morning, breathing hard, heart pounding. She had seen herself standing in a garden. No, a flower shop. She had been smiling. Someone had leaned in and tucked a small white flower behind her ear. She couldn't see the face, only the hands. Warm. Familiar. She didn't know what it meant, but she remembered how her heart felt in that dream. Safe. Back at the shop, Seo-jun arranged another bouquet. This one had no card, no expectations, just hope. He didn't know how long it would take, or if her memories would ever return. But even if she didn't remember him, he would help her fall in love again, even if he had to start from the beginning. That night, as Ga sat at her window, staring into the night sky, she whispered aloud to no one in particular. "Why does it feel like someone's waiting for me?" 3 weeks had passed since Ga had been discharged from the hospital. She had returned to her parents' house in Gangnam, a space that should have been familiar, but felt oddly foreign. The walls were the same, the smell of her mother's cooking was the same, even her bedroom was untouched. Yet, everything felt disconnected, like she was walking through someone else's memories. Her parents were cautious, constantly checking in on her, treating her like she might shatter. She appreciated their care, but the overprotection suffocated her. What she truly longed for was something unspoken, a warmth she couldn't place, a voice she sometimes heard in her dreams, a face that remained just out of reach. Despite her doctor's advice to ease into routine, Ga requested to return to work part-time. Being in her office surrounded by blueprints and architectural models gave her a sense of purpose. Though some faces were unfamiliar, others welcomed her back with quiet warmth and sympathy. They didn't mention Seo-jun, because they didn't know. Her first day back was uneventful, until a delivery arrived late in the afternoon. A bouquet of fresh peonies and white lisianthus was brought to her colleague's desk. The delivery man stood silently as her colleague signed the receipt. Gi turned to thank him out of habit, and when their eyes met, she froze. Kang Seo-jun stood before her, holding a clipboard, dressed in a simple beige sweater and jeans. His eyes, warm and dark, lingered on her just a second too long. He offered a small, respectful bow. "Delivery for room 4B, he said softly, his voice smooth but reserved. She blinked. "You look familiar." His expression faltered, just a little. "I deliver here sometimes." Ga tilted her head. "Have we met before?" Seo-jun gave her the gentlest smile. "I think so. Maybe in another life." It was meant to be a joke, light-hearted. But for Ga, it stirred something deeper, a flutter in her chest she didn't understand. As he turned and walked away, she kept watching him until the elevator doors closed. That night, she couldn't sleep. Her mind replayed the short exchange over and over. The way he looked at her. There was something more behind it. Not desire, not even desperation. It was something steady, something quiet and long-lasting. Something familiar. The next few weeks unfolded like a subtle melody. Every few days, Ga would find small things waiting for her at work, never addressed to anyone, never signed. A coffee left on her desk, the exact blend she liked, half sugar, no cream. A playlist sent anonymously to her email titled 4 Rainy Afternoons, filled with songs she used to play while sketching designs. A worn copy of a book of poetry she once loved in college, placed neatly in her locker at the office. She asked around, but no one claimed credit. Her friends joked that she had a secret admirer, but Ga wasn't amused. She was unsettled, and yet also comforted. These weren't random gifts. They were too precise. Someone knew her. And every so often, Seo-jun would appear. Sometimes dropping off flowers at a client's office. Other times tending to the small rooftop garden her firm managed for corporate clients. He always greeted her politely, never lingering long, never bringing up the past. They began to speak more often. First about flowers, then about their favorite spots in the city. He once mentioned a small hanok-style tea shop in Bukchon, and she responded with confusion, only to find it reappearing in her dreams later that night. It wasn't long before they started meeting outside of work. Always casually. Always initiated by her. A coffee after a long day. A walk through the park. Browsing a local art fair. And every time she was with him, Ga felt a strange sense of calm, like sitting in front of a fireplace after being out in the cold. He never once brought up their past, never told her who he really was to her. He simply listened, smiled, let her find comfort in his presence, without expecting anything in return. and something inside her began to shift. She started painting again. The accident had not only robbed her of memories, but also of her creative spark. She hadn't touched a brush in months, but one weekend, on a whim, she set up an old canvas and began to paint what she had seen in her dreams. It was vague at first, a storefront at dusk, soft lights glowing through large glass windows, shelves filled with blossoms of every color, a single chair by the counter, and a man's silhouette facing the window. It wasn't until she finished the painting that she realized what it was. It was Seo-jun's flower shop. Though she had never stepped inside it since her accident, she recognized it down to the smallest details. The placement of the wooden sign, the tiny hanging wind chime, even the way the morning light hit the display window. She stared at the canvas in disbelief. Her hands trembled as she traced the edges of the silhouette. That evening, she opened an old moving box her mother had packed from her apartment, boxes she had ignored until now. Inside were books, sketch pads, and near the bottom, a thick leather photo album. Curious, she flipped it open. The first few pages were ordinary, pictures of her colleagues, birthday dinners, work events. But then she turned to a page that made her stop cold. There in the center was a photograph of her and Seo-jun. They were standing outside the flower shop. He had his arms wrapped around her from behind, her head resting on his shoulder. Both of them were laughing. She was holding a sunflower, and he was smiling. Not for the camera, but at her. It was the kind of smile you can't fake, the kind that only comes when you're completely in love. She flipped through more pages. Dozens of them. Trips to the mountains. Cooking together. Her sketching while he arranged flowers. A snowball fight in the street. Notes written in the margins of the photos. Inside jokes. Small confessions. Dates she didn't remember. She closed the album, her heart pounding. In her chest, the man who had been quietly appearing in her life, never pressuring her, always kind. That man wasn't just someone she used to know. He was someone she had loved. And maybe still did. Ga stares at the photo album in silence, then lifts her phone and dials a number she once knew by heart. But as it rings, she hesitates. The line connects. She doesn't speak. "Hello?" Seo-jun's voice says softly. "Ga?" Her breath catches. The photo was simple. A candid shot of Ga and Seo-jun sitting side by side in his flower shop, both of them smiling without looking at the camera. Ga had her head slightly tilted toward him, and Seo-jun's hand rested gently on hers atop the table. There was something unforced about it. Something real. Ga stared at it for a long time, her fingers trembling as she held the album. Her heart raced with an emotion she couldn't name, like longing, but laced with confusion. How could this man, who always seemed to show up just when she needed someone, be part of a life she didn't even remember? She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, with the photo album in her bag and determination in her step, Ga went to find him. She didn't call ahead. She just walked into the flower shop, heart pounding, eyes scanning the shelves of blooms. He was there, arranging a bouquet in the back. The same soft expression crossed his face when he saw her, but it quickly changed as he noticed her seriousness. "Ga?" he said gently. She walked toward him, pulled out the photo, and placed it on the counter between them. "Tell me everything," she said, her voice steady. "No more games, no more kindness without explanation. I deserve to know." Seo-jun looked down at the photograph. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he nodded. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to overwhelm you," he said softly. "I thought if I waited, if I was just there, your heart might remember me on its own." "And it almost did," she said. "But I thought I was going crazy. You acted like we were strangers. You never pushed, never hinted. I didn't know what to believe." Seo-jun took a deep breath. "We met 5 years ago. You walked into my shop to buy flowers for a client. You hated the arrangement I offered, said it lacked soul. I was annoyed, but I never forgot you. You came back the next week and then the next. Eventually I asked you out." He paused, remembering. "You changed everything for me. You brought color into my quiet world. And I was going to propose the night of our anniversary. But then you never showed up. I waited for hours, thinking maybe you got held up. I didn't know until the next morning that you'd been in an accident. Jie's eyes began to fill with tears, her throat tightening. I came to the hospital every day. I begged the doctors for updates. I sat by your side until they made me leave at night. But when you woke up, you didn't know who I was. And your parents... My parents didn't even know we were dating. She finished the sentence for him. They must have thought you were just... someone. They were trying to protect you. I didn't blame them. But they asked me to stay away, to let you heal. And I respected that. I stayed back, until I couldn't anymore. And now, she whispered, now, I still love you, just like I always have. But I won't ask you to remember us. I won't ask you for anything. I just wanted you to know the truth. She stepped back, her thoughts spinning. Her voice was barely audible. I need time. He nodded again, of course. And with that, she walked out. Days passed in a blur. Ga went through the motions at work, but her mind was elsewhere. Every corner of her apartment felt like it was hiding a secret from her. She started combing through her old things, boxes of sketches, books, receipts, notes, trying to trace the life she had lost. One afternoon, she found herself standing in front of the flower shop again. She didn't know why, only that something inside her pulled her there. The shop was closed, but the door was unlocked. She stepped inside and walked to the back, her eyes scanning the space. It felt like déjà vu, every detail familiar yet elusive. On a low shelf beneath the register, she spotted a drawer slightly ajar. She pulled it open and found a sketchbook. She opened it. Page after page was filled with drawings, flowers, street corners, abstract designs. And then, him. Seo-jun, smiling as he stood beside a vase of peonies. Seo-jun, holding her hand beneath a table. Seo-jun, kneeling with a tiny box in hand. Tears welled in her eyes as she flipped to the last page. A note was scrawled in her handwriting. Even if I forget everything, my heart will still know him. She sat down on the floor, clutching the book to her chest. That night she began to dream again. Not just flashes, but full moments. The sound of his laugh. The warmth of his hands. The way he looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The next morning, she started journaling, writing down what she remembered, what she felt. It was a slow process. Some memories came clearly. Others were blurry, but they were hers. A week later, she sat down with her parents. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" she asked quietly. Her mother looked away, ashamed. "We didn't want to overwhelm you. The doctors said emotional stress could be dangerous, and we didn't know how serious it was between you two." Ga stared at them. "He stayed with me in the hospital, didn't he?" Her father nodded. "Every day. He refused to leave, even when we asked him to. I saw him sleep on a bench outside your room." Her heart ached with the weight of everything. She didn't know, or hadn't known until now. "I think I need to see him," she said. That same day, Seo-jun stood in his shop, suitcase by the door, keys in hand. He had made his decision. He was going to leave Seoul. Not because he gave up on her, but because he realized that sometimes loving someone meant knowing when to let them go. He looked around the shop one last time. The memories were everywhere. The ghost of her laughter, the echo of their shared life. He turned to the door, and there she was. Ga stood on the threshold, breathless, eyes wide. She looked different, lighter, like someone who had found something precious again. He froze, unable to speak. "I remember," she said softly. "Not everything. Not yet. But enough to know I don't want to lose you twice." Seo-jun's heart stopped. She stepped forward and reached into her bag, pulling out the sketchbook. "You kept this," she whispered. "You kept us." He nodded, too choked to respond. "I don't know what happens next," she said. "But if you're still willing, I'd like to try." He took a step closer, his voice breaking. "I've been waiting for you to say that." The first morning after she found her way back to him felt like a dream Neither of them dared to disturb. Gi sat quietly in Seo-jun's flower shop, sipping the same tea she used to love, surrounded by the gentle fragrance of white camellias and freesia. She looked around slowly, soaking in the details. Sunlight catching on the glass vases, petals scattered on the counter, and his handwriting labeling tiny tags of care instructions. He watched her from across the room, not saying much. It still felt fragile, like something just beginning to bloom after surviving the coldest winter. "I don't remember everything," she said again, as if afraid he'd forgotten. Seo-jun smiled faintly. "You don't have to. We can make new memories too." Ji looked down at her hands. "But I want to. I feel like there's this version of me that loved you with everything she had, and I want to meet her. I want to understand her choices. I want to feel what she felt." "You already are," he said gently. She glanced up at him, eyes wide. "You think so?" He nodded. "I see it in how you look at me now. It's different from before, sure. But it's not unfamiliar. You don't have to chase the past to be with me. You're here now. That's enough for me." Her throat tightened. "Why didn't you fight harder? Back then, after the accident?" His expression shifted, with quiet pain. "I did, every day. But your parents were scared, and I couldn't blame them. I kept thinking, if it were me lying in that hospital bed, would I want someone barging in, forcing me to remember something that might cause me more harm? So I waited. I left flowers at the front desk. I called your mother sometimes. I asked about you. But I stayed away. Until I saw you at work again, and I couldn't stay away anymore." Ga felt tears sting her eyes. "And all that time, you never told me." "I was scared," he admitted, "that if I told you, you'd push me away. That it would feel like pressure, like a story you couldn't connect to. I wanted it to be your heart that found me again, not your memory." She stood slowly and walked toward him. "My heart never really left you," she said, voice trembling. Seo-jun closed the space between them, and for a long moment they simply stood there, silent, close, breathing the same air. Then, almost hesitantly, she reached for his hand. "Let's take this." Slowly, she whispered. "But let's take it together." The days that followed were gentle and unhurried. Ga kept a small notebook in her bag, where she jotted down moments that felt familiar, phrases that sparked something, and the dreams that continued to come at night. More vivid now, less fragmented. Some days, they walked the banks of the Han River, where she used to sketch while Seo-jun read beside her. One evening, as the golden hour light bathed the city in warmth, she reached into her notebook and read aloud something she'd written. "Sometimes, the body forgets, but the heart keeps its own kind of memory." Seo-jun looked at her with something like awe. "I think you've always been the poet between us," he said. She laughed, a full, warm sound that made him fall in love. All over again, back at her apartment, Ga began to find small artifacts of their past life together tucked into drawers and boxes. A playlist titled "Sunday Mornings with You," an old movie ticket stub folded in her wallet, even a dried flower petal pressed between the pages of her favorite book. Each item was like a thread pulling her back to the woman she used to be. Not to replace who she was now, but to merge the two. Her parents noticed the change too. One night, her mother came to her with something wrapped in tissue paper. "This was with your things when you were in the hospital. I wasn't sure if it was important, but now, I think you should have it." Ga unwrapped it slowly. It was a small velvet box. Inside was the engagement ring. Simple, elegant, hers. Her breath caught. She turned it in her fingers, 1,000 questions flooding her mind. "He was going to propose that night," her mother said softly. "He told us later. He'd planned everything." Ga swallowed hard. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because he loved you enough not to rush you." Later that week, she found herself back in the shop. The sky outside was gray, threatening rain, but inside the shop, the air was filled with lilacs, and soft jazz playing low in the background. Seo-jun stood by the window, arranging stems in a glass vase. He looked up when she walked in. "You're early," he said, surprised. She held up the velvet box. "I found this." His face changed, a flicker of old pain and restrained emotion moving through his expression. "I didn't know if you'd ever see it." "I did," she said, "and I realized something." She crossed the room, slowly, deliberately. "I may never recover all of my memories, but what I feel for you now, it's not less. It's different, but it's real." He didn't say anything. He simply waited. She smiled, her eyes soft and sure. "So if you're still willing, maybe we don't need to pick up where we left off. Maybe we start again. Not from the beginning, but from here." Seo Jun's throat tightened. "Here is perfect." She handed him the ring box. "Then keep this, for when the time feels right again." And he did. He didn't open it. He just held it in his hand, like a second chance he never thought he'd be given. Months passed. Seasons shifted. They didn't rush anything. They cooked together on rainy nights, shared stories about childhood, visited bookstores, and walked aimlessly through Gyeongbokgung Palace when the cherry blossoms began to bloom again. Ga painted. Seo Jun wrote little notes and left them, in her bag, in her books, beside her morning coffee. They fell in love again. Not as strangers becoming something, but as soulmates remembering what had never been lost in the first place. And one crisp evening in October, just as golden leaves curled along the edges of the pavement outside the shop, Seo Jun took her hand and knelt down. Not as a man trying to reclaim the past, but as someone ready to build a future. "Not because of what we had," he said, "but because of who you are now, and who we are now." Ga didn't hesitate. She said yes. Not because her memory returned completely, but because her heart had never forgotten. Not really. Not once. And neither had his.